Welcome to Heart-Based Medicine's Heart of Healthcare podcast, featuring Leonard Laskow MD, healing with love and forgiveness.
Leonard Laskow, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm really honored to be here with you in your home, in your place where you live now in Switzerland.
Yes.
And you have been, for me, like a star on the horizon of pioneers of love in medicine and healing with love.
Yes.
And you have written a book called Healing with Love.
Yes.
And then a second one, Forgiving Love.
And I'm working on a third now, Choose Peace Now.
Choose Peace Now. Beautiful. We're curious to hear about that too.
Okay.
But maybe just, for many you don't need an introduction, but for those who don't know you yet, you have your life story, you've dedicated your life to healing with love.
Yeah.
And at some point, maybe if you allow, we can go back a little bit in time and see there was a time when you were trained as a physician, as a OB GYN physician, and then something happened that kind of changed your tracks a little bit.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that?
Well, you know, I've been a physician, it's hard to believe now, looking at it, for about 57 years, and done deliveries and surgeries and so on. But at one point in my life, I started feeling that there was something beyond being a doctor. There was a calling that I heard. And anyway, so I started going to some seminars, and there was one seminar that I went to, and I was meditating, and it was 2:00 in the morning, and the room was dark, and then suddenly it seemed like it was filled with light, and I opened my eyes, and the room was still dark. So I closed my eyes, and again there was this inner luminosity. And then I felt that there was a presence of some sort in the room. And then I heard inside my head what I'd say is a voice. And the voice said, your work is to heal with love. I mean, it was incredibly clear. And I said, oh, so I'm worthy. And this presence said, you are no more or less worthy than anyone else. Your work is to heal with love. I mean, it was so clear. It was so incredible. And the hair stood up in the back of my neck. Tears started spontaneously rolling down my cheeks. I knew it was true, but I didn't know what it meant. What was love and what was healing? But that was my work. And I was so grateful that I heard that this is truly my work. I realized that going into medicine was a contribution to this work, but this was the greater work. Wow. So anyway, that set me up. Now I knew, and that's the title of the book, Healing with Love. And interestingly enough, the editors at Harper, the publishers of the book, didn't like the title, Healing with Love. They said it's a little hokey, Healing with Love. I said, it has to be that, because I knew it was coming from grace. I didn't know, I couldn't identify what the source is. It didn't matter. I knew that it was coming from beyond my thinking mind, and that's all that mattered to me. So that's how that really began. And then other things happened. Well, one thing that happened was I was at another seminar, and I had as my roommate a composer of children's songs. And it turned out that he had metastatic lung cancer. He had 7 golf ball size lesions in one lung and 10 in another. One kidney was non-functional with cancer. And so during the first night, I was awakened. I could hear he was having trouble breathing, and it sounded like he was in pain, and I got up and I said, "Can I help you?" He was from Australia. And he said, "Anything, mate, anything." And I stopped thinking. I just sat down on his bed and I put my hands on both sides of his chest, spontaneously visualized a radiant ball of sun above my head. It felt like this radiant sun moved down through the top of my head to my heart. Again, this was all spontaneous. The energy flowed out through my shoulders into my hands, and there I recreated spontaneously this radiant sun between my hands and just held it there. There was no other intention than that. Just held it there. And then he started to take deep breaths, and he said, "Oh, thanks, Doc. The pain's gone. Pain's gone." And so then I got up, and he slept well that night. And when he got up in the morning, he said, "You know, Doc, you're really a healer." And I thought, healing with love. I know that I didn't do anything as an intentional person, but energy came through me. And that subsequently became important in the work that I learned to do in healing with love. So it wasn't my personal doing. There was some kind of a transcendent energy that could come through if it was allowed. And it felt like an unconditional love. That, it was beyond conditionality. So that was one thing. And then I started to say, well, what is this healing and what is this love? And that's what started me in the laboratory. I wanted to know what was going on. Other things happened after that, which I recount in the book, other healings that occurred over the course of a year. So I knew there was something here, but I needed to explore. What is this thing called love,
It's not something you had written, you read in the textbooks. It's
No,
not something
no.
you read in the medical textbooks.
No, if you go to a medical textbook and you look up the index and you look up love, you won't find it. I don't even think you'll find it today.
No, I looked at it. I searched for it. It's very limited, let's say, in the medical literature. There is some, but it's very limited.
Yeah.
And I looked at it in the World Health Organization. I thought, well, if anywhere,
Right.
then the organization representing health on this planet. But no.
See, what you find is the biology of love.
Yeah.
That you can find, the hormones associated with it and so on. I've subsequently integrated that in the work that I do and the books, and I even talk about the biology of forgiveness. But anyway, other healings took place, especially in the gynecologic area, and which I write about and so on. But the other healings encouraged me to speak to my colleagues who had university connections. And I said, let's do this research, We set up the research and we did it. And one other thing that happened that was important for me was that when I started to do research with salmonella. And and so that was very interesting. In preparation for the research, I looked under the microscope at a petri dish containing salmonella. And as I was looking at the salmonella, something shifted in me. And suddenly, I realized the same creator that created me created the salmonella. It was just that with my medical background, I called it a pathogen that causes disease, that causes dysentery in humans. But something shifted, and And it was like my consciousness and the consciousness of the bacteria became one at the level of consciousness. That turned out to be very important, at the level of consciousness. And there was a connection like with all life in that moment. It was beyond a placebo. And then at that moment I said, reduce your growth rate. I didn't want to just kill it because I just acknowledged it had the same right to live that I did. It's just that my medical training, shifted that thought. It was a thought. So we became one at the level of consciousness. And then asking it to reduce its growth rate, it reduced its growth rate by 50% relative to controls. And then we did some more research with antibiotics, different antibiotics, and wanted to see if the antibiotics could protect the bacteria from the lethal effects of antibiotics. And we found that it could. I did this with a biophysicist, microbiologist at UC Berkeley. And so that was what got me started, because I knew now that this was real. That healing with love was real. It really works. We didn't know all the details, but I knew that it worked, and that's what really got me going in all of this. So anyway, that's a story. That's the story.
That was the beginning
That's the beginning.
of a life's dedication to healing
Right.
with love and to developing processes
Exactly.
and giving seminars and supporting
Yes,
healthcare professionals
exactly.
to, if you like, follow in your footsteps
Yes,
and to join you on your path.
yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about these seminars and what you are teaching?
Well, what I realized is that it's not about doing more healing work for me. In other words, there are countless people who would need healing, and you could spend how many lifetimes doing more and more healing. My work was not about just healing. It was finding out how and why healing with love worked. Your work is to heal with love. It wasn't about just doing more healing. And so that was the key, to really explore what that was. And what's the deepest healing? Well, the deepest healing is healing into oneness. See, in every form of love is a way of merging into oneness. Whether it's love of a food, or love of a lover, a husband, a wife, children, there's a quality of resonance, of merging into oneness with that person at whatever level it takes place at. And what's the highest level of merging? Merging with Source, merging with the formless one, beyond the form, and including the form. So it's merging with duality and non-duality, transcending both into oneness. That's the highest learning. That's what we've all come here for, regardless of what we're doing, regardless of, doctoring or nursing or whatever other form of help or what. We all came here for that. Whether we realize it or not this lifetime, there'll be other opportunities to explore that. But so, in answer to your question, what I did was I developed processes that allow people to come home to who they really are, to their, we could say, essential nature, but it's beyond their essential nature, it's into oneness. So at oneness, you're not male and you're not female. You're both and not and neither. Wow, that's profound. And how to be there. So what do you have to do in order to get there? Well, you have to transcend the thinking mind with its conditioning. And how do you do that? Well, sometimes you have to trick it because it's very clever. It wants to stay what it considers alive, make you think that who you are is it, the thinking mind. Wow. So how do you do that? So that's what these processes are ultimately about.
And you're dealing with a, let's say, difficult audience because they have been very highly trained in their
Sure.
conceptualized mind.
Exactly.
As physicians, we have been trained to conceptualize the world and to conceptualize health and illness
Right.
and, as you said, pathogens, so what is good and bad. So there's all
Exactly.
sorts of labels.
Right.
And they, as far as I can see, is that they arise from a very, this way of thinking
Right.
arises from a laudable aim to try and classify
Yes.
and come to grips with the three-dimensional world
Exactly.
for the price of simplifying. But what you're saying is there is a way to not having to simplify,
Sure.
but there's a way to directly connect
Exactly.
without dismissing what we've learned,
Sure.
without
Well-
dismissing the logical mind.
Well, you know, the conscious mind, it has functions, and one of its functions is to categorize and compartmentalize and function in that way. So the functional mind is valuable in interacting in a day-to-day life. You have to catch the train, you know, you have time. That time and space are important. You know, this is a space, and there's certain times, and you have to function in that way. The thing to know is, it's like getting into a car. You know, you drive it, you go in, get in, drive it, take you where you want to go, and then you park it and you leave it. Of course, we can't do that most of the time with the mind. And so that scares people, because how can they function without a mind? But you have to transcend the mind to go to the space of oneness, because it's beyond the mind. So how to do that? And what's interesting is, which is what I discovered for me, is the way to transcend the mind is to go into the heart. And go not just into the heart, but into the heart space. Because really what we're talking about is beyond time and space.
So what do you mean by the heart space?
Well, that's a process. I won't take you through that process today, but that's a process. Maybe sometime we can do. By the way, it's in the book. It's in Forgiving Love, the latest. Because there's a head space and a heart space. There are some people who can't move into the heart space directly just because of what you had mentioned, because they're so focused. And as a doctor, I'm very, I understand that kind of focus that has to take place. But we can transcend the head space if we know how to do it. So this is what the work is about. And forgiving love is, in part, is forgiving yourself for not knowing that you need to transcend the head space. Isn't that beautiful?
Beautiful. So before we go into, I'm really curious to go through this process with you. But before we go there, I would really love to know what you have observed as a result of your teachings and seminars. So you've been teaching medical professionals and
Yes.
and non-medical professionals,
Sure.
other professional backgrounds.
Sure. Well, I've given seminars in so far 15 countries, and 2-week seminars in Bali and Hawaii, things like that. I've given, 15 countries and so on. So now I'm retired. So I stopped giving seminars. And that's one of the things my wife asked about, well, you've retired, what do you have to say? So I said, well, wait a minute, I still have some things to say.
Thank you for sharing. So that those who wish to follow in your footsteps and who wish to build on your work can.
That's my hope, that this will spark, ignite an inner flame so that people can experience their own inner light, and truly come home to who they are. And what I discovered was that it's really important to, at some point, love yourself the way you would like to be loved by others, It's almost a teaching of Jesus, to say that. But and it's come from a very profound place for him. So that's important, how to unconditionally love yourself. See? And then
also something that is not very familiar to physicians. We're used to kind of altruistic service.
Right.
And many physicians at least share the trait of not taking care of themselves, not even taking care of themselves, not to speak of true love. We're not talking about aloofness or egotistic self-love, but true unconditional self-love is something that we're not trained in.
Look, I still remember once I was doing surgery, and I guess I had the flu or something, and so I was operating and with an assistant surgeon, and I just felt I couldn't continue. I broke out in a sweat. The anesthesiologist said something to my associate surgeon, and he got up and led me to the doctor's room and got me lying down on the couch there. My assistant surgeon, continued the work. I mean, he was also a fully fledged OB GYN. He wasn't, but you see, we discount ourselves. We're trained to do that. We're trained with regard to our feelings as well, not to have the feelings of like deep compassion and love. And so we have to transcend our role as a not just as a physician, but also all the other roles that society assigns to us as, fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, sisters, brothers. We have to transcend those ultimately to really look at who we really, really are and get to the point where we discover who we really, really are is an awareness of awareness. Because without that, we wouldn't be aware of anything else. So that's primary. The awareness of awareness, which is called consciousness, by the way. So coming home to a consciousness which is beyond form. So we go from the form to the formless to oneness. And that's what I've learned over the course of all these years. And then to develop processes to take people home. And how does that work? Well, some of the processes involve eye-to-eye connection with another person, and then asking that person. Because when you focus eye-to-eye like that, you start to shift into consciousness. There's an intermediary called the soul, which is the interface between consciousness, between form and formless. And we learn in the seminars how to do that. Shift first to soul, and then through the eye-to-eye dyadic processes with questions like the other person will say, from your heart space, Tell me who you are in this moment. Wow, and then there's nothing. There's no nodding from the person who asked you the question. No grimacing, no smiling. No, yes, that's the right answer. Or, no, that's not. See, that person is just a consciousness mirror for you. And that's profound, these eye-to-eye exercises. So I'm just giving you just a touch of, the power of these. You have to transcend, as I say, the mind. And these are ways that you do that.
You have discovered this over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And still you were practicing.
Yes.
You were still a practicing physician.
Yes.
How did this change your own life, your own perception and way of being a physician?
I started having success with healing with patients, and yet, what I was doing was I was focusing energy on my hands, through my hands, loving energy, and changes were occurring. But I was concerned that, in California, the Board of Medical Examiners would come knocking at my door and say, so this patient, came to you with this, and this problem, and then you did what, and then, and I said, well, I'm a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist, life fellow, and you did what? So I got concerned, and I sort of slowed down because I was starting to get busy with people saying, they were coming in and getting some healing work done. I said, well, I have to. That's why I have to do the research to somehow find out how this worked, to justify it. So my work is not to do more healing work, because it's almost infinite, It's really to do the research and to find out where I'm really going. And that's when I discovered the real work of love is transcendence into oneness.
And those who you have trained, those physicians you have trained, did you get feedback from them, how their experience and how their practice has changed based on your training?
Well, I wound up working mostly with people who are French, and they were speaking the language, and everything that I was doing was translated into French. And I found that, some of the people who took the work focused on the processes, but they didn't have the consciousness to take it all the way. So there are a few who have done that and now share it and teach it. But most are working with the processes. One is called the tracing process, which takes people back to sometimes their mother's womb, and picking up as a fetus, precognitively, pre-verbally, what it is that the mother was feeling. But not only the mother, what the mother was feeling in her culture, in her religion, and what the father was feeling. Father wanted a boy, and the fetus was a female. And, as a fetus, it picked that up pre-verbally, precognitively. And when we did a tracing process on this person who came to the seminar, I remember one person vividly, and she was very athletic. She was about 32 years old, very competitive, won lots of medals and so on, had trouble with her menstrual cycle because she was very athletic. And we went back to the time when she was in her mother's womb and realized that her father wanted a boy. And the next day when she came into the seminar, her hair was totally different. She was totally different, and she had started her menstrual cycle the first time in about 8 months. And it totally changed her life. This is just an example of, the things that happen when you go back to a time. I call it fishing. Because you have to, it doesn't always work, but sometimes it's so profound. And then we have other processes, the ancestral harmonization process, which takes you back. You do a genogram and takes you back through your ancestral tree. And you find out where these conditioning thoughts and experiences come from. And then you release them, and you also release ancestors who may no longer be in physical form. Amazing. And you do that for your children as well, because they're picking up the same information. So it's it's been quite an amazing journey. I didn't know where it would go when we started, but this is what we found.
Beautiful. So I would love to have, maybe at a separate occasion, I would love to have a conversation with you about, like, the science of healing with love. So
Sure.
what you found in your research and what you know about others have found.
Sure.
And and your attempt to bring these two worlds together. But you have already mentioned a process that you would like to share.
Yes.
And I'd be very curious to learn about this. This is one of the key processes in the healing with love.
Right. And I call this, in fact, the unconditional love process. And so it would be wonderful if people would be willing to experience unconditional love, because most of the love that we really have is conditioned love. And by the way, there is also another form of love, which I call the non-conditioned love. The unconditioned love has a vector or an object. You can direct it at a person or yourself. In this case, it's yourself that you're directing it toward. But non-conditioned love is like the sun. It radiates on everything. It has no vector. But it's the same love, but without a vector. So, and I point this out in Forgiving Love, just so people know that, because that non-conditioned love is kind of sometimes like the love that Jesus talked about, So if people are ready now, they can gently close their eyes and allow themselves to begin to relax. And one of the best ways to relax is to become aware of your breathing. Just aware that when you're breathing in, you're breathing in, and when you're breathing out, you're breathing out. And if other thoughts or feelings or sensations come to mind, just gently but firmly bring your awareness back to your breath. And in this peaceful space, allow yourself to begin to feel in the center of your chest a sense of complete and total, boundless, infinite love for yourself. For yourself. A love for every organ, every atom in your body. For every part of your being. Now, this is a love with no comparisons, no judgments, no attachment to outcome. A love without condition or reason or cause. Beyond all time and space. A love even beyond understanding. And with your next breath, allow your whole chest to fill with loving light. Moving up into your shoulders and down your arms to your fingertips. Allow the light to move up into your neck and up into your head, filling your entire head. Imagine this loving light filling your entire head so completely that it begins to flow out the top of your head like a fountain of loving light. A fountain of loving light cascading down, over and through your body. Flowing through your body and out your feet into the earth below. Flowing, clearing, releasing, dissolving the illusion of separation that veils you from your essential nature. Now, allow yourself to feel the exquisite love of your essential nature. Allow yourself to feel the exquisite love of your essential nature. This is a love that, like the sun, is ever present. Like the sun, it's sometimes obscured by clouds. Like the sun that patiently waits for the earth to rotate out of darkness into its light again. This exquisite love patiently waits for you, its expression in form, to ask, to open, to receive its love. And so a love beyond earning, beyond learning, a love ever present, ever present. Allow yourself to feel this exquisite love suffusing your entire body from the top of your head to the tips of your fingers and toes until your body glows with this exquisite love. Just allow it in. Now, ask this exquisite love to heal what needs to be healed. Love what needs to be loved. Do what needs to be done to bring me into wholeness so that we, form and essence, are one. So that we, form and essence, are one. And now if there is an area of your body calling for love, attention, and healing, if there's an area of your body calling for love, attention, and healing, place your attention and or hands on that area and silently say, return to your natural order, harmony, structure, and function, already healed and whole, already healed, and whole. Just ask. Just ask. And then allow it. Allow it to be done. Allow it to be done by divine grace. And it is done. You are one. Eternally, infinitely, only one. Focus again on the center of your chest, feeling that sense of complete, total, boundless, infinite love. Take in a deep breath and hold it for a moment. And when you release it, send a burst of light from the center of your chest to every cell, every atom in your body so they scintillate and sparkle like stars on a brilliant night. From stardust to stardust. And when you're ready, gently opening your eyes, alive and aware, here and now. See, and this resonates with your unconditional love for yourself.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome home.
Thanks a lot for sharing this with us.
Yes,
Thanks a lot for taking the time.
it's a blessing for me. And anyone else who is inspired by this. Mm-hmm.
We will.
And most importantly, including yourself. So thank you for being.
This has been a Heart-Based Medicine production. Thanks for listening.